Let's finish with the Adelaide 36ers as we've been breaking it down team by team. The Adelaide 36ers have been like the little girl in the fable. They pick off the petals in the flower and they say, I love you not, I love you, I love you not. There are times this season where they've all loved each other. There are times this season where they've all hated each other. But with 2 rounds to go as we record today, that they look set to at least make the play-in. And they've got a couple of really key names under contract for next season.
They do. I mean, you've got one of the best local shooters in Vasiljevic, one of the best local big men in Isaac Humphries, who in recent weeks has been unbelievable, especially on the defensive end, to help them really change their entire season. So those are some key names to, again, build around. We spoke about this at the end of last season too, though. So they had those guys locked in for multi-year deals. So this is a great starting point. Now you just fit these pieces around. This seems like, I know we spoke about it in episode 1, that the desire to keep Kendric Davis here long term, which makes sense. He's been unbelievable. But it seems like it's also one of those, whenever their season ends, and they're playing really well, so it could be a while from now, but it's one of those deep breaths where, okay, that season's done and gone. Let's just relax and let's really go back and look at where we went wrong, what went right, and then let's evaluate it from there. If they get Kendric Davis long-term deal sorted, that changes the landscape of what's going to happen going forward, what pieces you put around these key 3, because you also look at some of the guys who are out. I'm looking at Sunday Dech and Lat Mayen, who you've got 2 key guys, 2 key contributors that maybe could really be beneficial to bring back there, or are they going to be wanting more of an opportunity elsewhere? It's tough.
Well, I think the past few weeks and rounds have really highlighted the value of Dech in their lineup. He gives them defense, enough of an offensive punch where teams have to pay attention to him and not be able to focus and load up on their other outstanding offensive players. And it's just that piece that's a bit more selfless, not knocking the other guys as being selfish. Those guys are so talented that they feel like they can do whatever they want with the basketball. But to get Davis signed up really gives you a strong 3 with Vasiljevic, Humphries, and Davis. And now you've got versatility when you go out to the marketplace.
Yeah, Kendric Davis is the priority. Obviously, they want to lock him in for multiple seasons. And once they do that, I think in a similar way to the Sydney Kings, where you've seen what this looks like to an extent, where you've seen what Kendric Davis, Dejan Vasiljevic, and Isaac Humphries look like on the floor, and how do we make sure that we complement them to the best of our abilities. You have Montrezl Harrell there right now. It's the fit has been somewhat clunky just by nature of him being a 5-man who's playing the 4, doesn't really stretch it, and so then Isaac Humphries has to sort of maneuver how he puts himself and impacts basketball, just by nature of Montrezl Harrell being there. Now, I'm told that Montrez he's guided by loyalty to an extent, so he hasn't ruled out a return to Adelaide. But I do think Adelaide will look at the entire picture and think, what is a fit that works maybe a little bit cleaner there than Montrez? And then I know that they have an intent to negotiate an extension with Lat Mayen. They'd like to get that done. They've expressed interest in bringing Sunday Dech back. Now, Sunday Dech will have options elsewhere. If he returns to Adelaide, he would have to take a pay cut of some sort because he's on the last season of a pretty substantial contract. But they'd like to keep him, and if they do that, then they have the core of what's been a really good basketball team over the course of the last 6 or 7 weeks. If they do that, then they're potentially a really good team again. But locking in Kendric is priority number 1.
Pete, if Montrezl Harrell does want to come back, as Olgun said, they found a way to make it work with Humphries and Montrez this season. Is it an ongoing situation, or if Montrez wants to come back to the NBL, should he potentially look at a better fit?
Well, I think a lot of it, again, is going to be played out over the next few weeks. Because if this team continues where they're at, defensively they've been unbelievable the last few weeks, and I think the defense is going to hold a lot of weight in the finals. But if they go deep, if they get to a semi-final series, go to 3 games in that, if they get even to a championship series, to show what they can do, that becomes enticing too. And again, from all reports, what we just see from Montrez, again, the joy in the post-game press conferences, on the court with the interviews, a lot of his social media, he talks about feeling the love from the fans, not just in Adelaide when he goes on the road. So all of that will hold weight. But again, all these players are competitors and they want to win at all costs. So now that they are actually winning ball games and looking one of the deadliest teams in the league, well, it becomes a bit more enticing of, hey, we could run this back. Let's just figure out ways to get it done. But I think then it would come with key. They need some veterans on that team then. If they're running it back, what key veterans are out there? What guys are going to be able to do a job vocally, leadership, where it's going to be all of that behind closed doors? That's a key thing as well.
And 2 things. The first on Montrez, I can't see him playing for another NBL team. We've seen how effective and how productive he is as an offensive player in the NBL. And over the past, again, 5 or 6 weeks, what Adelaide is doing defensively, like, okay, this is a team that can maybe function going forward if you do run it back with this group. he will have interest. He's got interest across the world. Whether he does that, obviously, once you're in Australia, you really enjoy being in Australia. Again, if he stays here, I think it's in Adelaide. And then you make a good point on who's contracted down the bench. That's been an issue with this Adelaide team all season, their depth. They play like 7.5 guys right now, and that's probably what they're going to play for the remainder of the season. So you have Nick Marshall, who has a team option, but I think they allow him to sort of go spread his wings somewhere else. But then they do have Ben Christie, Keanu Rasmussen, and they have a team option on Jacob Rigoni, which I expect them to pick up. So that's 3 guys at the end of your bench. That means that whomever you recruit as the rest of your bench need to be really high-level impact players, because those 3, it's still a question on whether they can impact NBL games consistently. So it's not just about making sure that you lock in Kendric Davis for the multiple seasons and making sure you build a team around that core now. It's also making sure that the role players you do recruit are ready to make an impact from day one.
So that's their team. The coach is the other side of things, Derek. It very nearly came apart about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Mike Wells was nearly for a brief second out of Adelaide. And as I say, they're on the same page right now. Do you see him coaching this team next year?
I don't think so, and I watched them pretty closely on the weekend. I watched the interaction between Kendric Davis and Mike Wells, and it all appeared cheery on the day. We don't know the depth of that. If they're able just to keep it confined to the basketball court, it's hard to understand like how that's going to manifest over the rest of the season. But is Mike Wells and Kendric Davis, are they capable of existing for 2-3 years together? Because ultimately, that's what you're probably trying to decide. And I don't know. I just don't know if Wells is the guy there. It doesn't mean that he's not a capable coach. We see it all the time with players. Good players come here and don't excel. Doesn't mean they're a bad player. Sometimes the fit is improper.
It's hard to really answer that until we see what happens in the next few weeks, because if they run the table from the 6th spot and win a championship, then you look at the last 2.5 months and, okay, this all worked. How do we all make this work then in the future? Let's try and run it back. If they get bounced in the first playing game, well, is the whole season a failure? So much to play out in that.
Even when they had that blow up, I was like, well, wait a minute. Mike Wells, you have a player that is excelling under you. That is something that is hard to get in basketball. And Kendric, you have a coach that is allowing you probably to play the best basketball of your life. You're an MVP candidate in one of the best leagues in the world. You guys got to figure it out, man. You got to be professional and understand the value that the two of you have with each other.
There is a relationship there between Kendric Davis and Mike Wells that does need mending. How long that takes, I don't know. But if you're this team, there is a chance, I wouldn't say it's a high chance, but there's a chance you may have to make a decision there between Kendric Davis and Mike Wells. Now, if they mend their relationship and everything is great going forward, then that's awesome. Then you hopefully can contract Kendric Davis and then you have Mike Wells contracted. But if not, you might have to make a decision. And who do you pick? Do you pick your head coach, or do you pick this guy who I think a lot of us would say is an obvious All-NBL first-team guy and arguably the most productive player in the NBL?
Olgun, I think the onus in this dynamic is on Mike Wells to go to management or the owner or whoever and say, you know what, I can make this work.
And he's doing that.
Yeah.
From what I understand, he's taking proactive steps in mending these relationships with everybody.
And whatever personal growth or coaching growth is required, and we got to keep in mind, this is essentially his first head coaching gig at the elite level. So he's learning. It doesn't matter how old you are. When you get in that hot seat for the first time, the world's a different place. And if he has the maturity to be understanding of what it takes to deal with volatile athletes, high-performing athletes, and he thinks he can be a better coach as a result of it, then potentially we look at Mike Wells returning.
Just throwing it out there, there's a coach in this league right now who used to deal with prisoners, who's pretty used to dealing with volatile characters. I'm serious when I say that I think Adam Ford would be a wonderful fit for the Adelaide 36ers.
I'll say this, I don't know if the 36ers want to continue bouncing off different coaches every season. They do want to create some continuity, and that's also where you give Mike Wells some level of grace in that he's come into an Adelaide 36ers team that every season I've covered this league has just been a bit noisy and a bit dramatic, bringing in a player like Montrezl Harrell, who is a very passionate gentleman. And so you give Mike Wells some grace in saying, this is a very difficult situation to be the head coach of. And over the past 5 or 6 weeks, he's doing a good job keeping everything together. We'll see if it lasts, how long it lasts, and whether the Adelaide 36ers want to sustain that. But all of that context is important in that situation.